My name is Nana Mwafu. I am a software engineer, currently working as a senior data developer for Financial Express. As a senior data developer, basically most of the time you spend looking at user stories. A user story is basically a description of functionality that's required. You then digest that functionality, design a solution to it, and then you write the software solution to that problem. So for example, I might say, okay, as a business owner, I would like a button that submits requests for users that need information from our company. And then as a developer, I would say, okay, for this button, I need to know where it's going to go on the page and the functionality behind it. And then I'll start writing or acquiring more information from others to see how it can be done. At school, my first interests came from working on computers at school, and basically we did that in ICT. Just basically I arrived from Ghana and came here in the fourth year of school. Obviously in Ghana I had limited access to computing. So I had a Commodore 64, I think. So coming into school here, they had a better system. They had an Amstrad system here. So from school, I went off to sixth form college where I studied computing, physics, maths, and I also threw in AS level electronics because my dad is an electronic engineer, so it kind of steered me in that direction. So even at school, I was building things. I was building amplifiers at home with car stereos in my room and things like that. So I had that interest in computing and electronics together. So from A levels, I then went into university. And obviously now I've got the electronics side from doing the AS level, my dad being an electronic engineer, and I've got this great interest in computing. So I kind of thought, why don't I just combine the two and do computer engineering rather than computer science? Computer science would just be computing. You wouldn't really play with electronics at all. So computer engineering is offered by the electronic engineering department, and therefore I got to do some stuff with logic gates, NAND gates, AND gates, and those things, and as well as doing computing courses from the computer science department. So computer science department obviously had the best kit, for computing, and so you got to combine those two. So that was quite good for me. Getting a degree in computer engineering meant that the jobs I could go for were more computer-related roles. So my first job was for a Java programming role, and because I studied Java for my final program that you have to do at university, I did that in Java, so therefore the job that I applied for was a Java role. What I find in the computing industry is the languages that you learn at university, they will usually be C, C++, Java, and similar languages like that. So basically when you go into the industry, the real world, they'll be looking for skills in those programming languages. So you can either go the Java route like I did, or for example, after that first job where I was doing Java programming, I then went to other jobs where I was doing C++ programming because I had done some C++ at university as well. So the initial jobs you get will be based on the programming that you've done at university. So if you do an appropriate course at university that leads on to jobs, directly related to it, then it helps from that point of view. As a programmer, I think what you also look out for is current trends. So things are becoming more popular. So when I left university, Java was new, Java was fresh, and everyone was kind of talking about it a bit more. So I wanted a Java role because that was the thing that was happening then. But after Java, I realized that the Microsoft technologies were still out there. So C++ was initially done by a company called Semantic, but Microsoft was becoming more popular doing C++ sort of languages, sort of frameworks for writing C++ programs. And hence Visual Studio became more well-known. And therefore I thought, well, if I go onto the Microsoft world and do C++, my future careers will be better. So I moved on to C++. And I found C++ quite tough when I started because I didn't really do much C++ since I left university. I've been doing Java instead. So the first job I got in London doing C++ was quite hard. but I got used to it after a while, because you get people in the industry who would help you, because you're obviously new in the company. They expect you not to know that much, so you're free to learn right from day one. So I got into programming in C++. I did that for a number of years, I think about 5 years, and then I realized that the next big thing was C#, which is also from Microsoft. So the transition between C# and C++ wasn't that difficult, but also knowing Java, because C# was kind of more related to Java. So that mix helped, really, knowing Java beforehand, doing C++, and then moving on to C#. So then I became a C# developer. And then from that role, I applied for other C# roles, and then FE became the next sort of role to go for, where I found they were doing, because also in programming, you've got the front-end programming, where you're doing more of the funky, beautiful websites kind of stuff, or you've got the back-end stuff where you're doing the real sort of behind-the-scenes work for the site, which no one really sees, but they just see the nice, pretty buttons and colors and everything. I realized I knew more about the back-end stuff, and I thought with FE, they were doing more of the front-end development stuff, and I felt if I could move more into the front-end development stuff, it would be much better. So I joined FE on that premise that I'll be doing more front-end development. I did that for a while, and then the job sort of changed slightly to become more back-end stuff. And now at the moment, I'm doing more stuff that you say is just back-end, because I'm dealing with purely data and API. So basically there's no front-end to it, there's no pretty sites to look at. Basically, it's just JSON data that I'm exporting out to customers, who would then present that in a nicer fashion on their website. In terms of languages and skills for a programmer, I would say if you're about to enter into university, check that the course that you're going to embark on has some of the most recent technologies on it. So basically things like Python is quite important for artificial intelligence. C# is obviously quite big now, because Microsoft are pushing it quite hard. Java is still out there, and there are good jobs in Java as well. But also try and pick up some database skills, because if you're going to be a back-end developer, for example, you will definitely have to send data somewhere, and if you're going to retrieve data from a database, you need to know some SQL skills as well. So yeah, it's good to check the course out, make sure it has some of the recent. So don't go into a course that teaches Visual Basic. I mean, it's good to have a Visual Basic module, because it gives you an introduction to programming. But if you can do that in Java is quite straightforward. You will get the basics without having to waste time on a language that pretty much no one else is really using anymore. In the programming world, you do have to communicate with others who don't have technical knowledge of the area that you're more competent with. So in my role, for example, if I get a user story, I do need to know what the story is about and who is expecting what results out of that story. So basically you'd have to ask questions and just be a friendly face to people, because people do have to interact with you, but don't talk to them in the technical speak, because you will not get the answers you're looking for. You need to speak at a level where they can actually give you what you need, because if someone tells you, write me a button that does X, unless you can communicate with them at a level that they understand, they won't be able to give you the information you need, and you'll produce the solution that they're not actually expecting, which will obviously be a waste of time for both of you. So communication is quite important, and a friendly level of communication without technical, garbage is probably best. For me at the moment, typical day, we're following a process, agile process. So we use Scrum here, and the typical day basically starts off with a stand-up where we discuss what happened the day before, what we worked on the day before, what we're planning to work on today, and if there were any issues from the previous work that has been done. So I do the stand-up at the moment, so I'm the Scrum Master, so I do that first, and then I pick up the user stories I'm going to be working on. So basically discussing the requirements, going through the code, making the changes, and then we have a testing team who may come back to me on something I deployed the day before, and as part of my job as well, checking code into our source control, which obviously causes the code to be deployed. So you need to test what you've deployed, because sometimes what happens is, because we work with the team in India, we deploy and leave, and then the India team starts early in the morning when we're all asleep, and they have nothing to test because the whole system is broken. So before you leave for the day, you need to check the stuff you've deployed actually works. So that kind of sums up a day, really. So start off with analyzing user stories, developing the required changes, deploying the changes, and then helping the QA team if they come up with any bugs that they don't appreciate or don't understand. Then you can sort of help them. The most interesting part of the job, I guess, is going to have to be the programming side, where you actually write something concrete and you're proud of what you've done. Because there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on each day, but as a developer, you're more interested in the code you've written. So if you write a complex solution, and just so you know, I mean, to be honest, with other sort of people interested in programming, not everything you're going to write is going to be your own work. You have to get that out of your head straight away, that you don't have to write everything from scratch. There's a lot of resources out there, and if you want to do something, you just have to think of the solution for yourself and how do you get that solution done. Don't try to program from the basics. We don't do that anymore. That's just, it's not necessary. Nowadays, you just find the resources you need, look online for programs that are similar to what you want. Don't obviously copy and paste other people's code, but just write it the way that someone else has suggested, and then write your own version of that code. What I find most challenging about my role is when I'm having to do support, and usually support of other people's code, where they've written something complex and you do not understand why it doesn't work, and it's your task to find out why it doesn't work. And that's quite challenging because you then have to kind of break down everything they've done and try to step through the code line by line, try to understand what they intended it to do in the first place and why it doesn't work. I find that quite challenging. Writing something from scratch is easier because you're in charge. Taking someone else's code and try to understand what they've done is a little bit more tricky. Just searching for a role as just a junior developer role, be willing to start from a lower level. I don't mind what level you are able to get into. If you're able to get to a higher role, that's fine. But if you start at a lower level, the chances are you will learn more, because you're then having to be given tasks that perhaps require a bit more investigation and a little more looking into. They're not going to be the highly well-designed versions of code that a senior developer would get handed to work on. So you would end up having to do more work into research and that kind of stuff. So yeah, be willing to start from the bottom up and then work your way up. And I would advise that if you're able to, as much as possible, just work on yourself by learning programming outside of your work, because work is one thing, but you're only there for 7 hours, 8 hours max. The rest of the 24 hours is yours. So if you're able to learn outside of work, that would really help with your career progression. And if there's a language you think, oh, this language sounds interesting, but that's not what I'm doing at work, there's no harm in actually learning that language, because you never know when your next role might actually require that language. Because usually what happens is when you apply for a role, they don't just say, we want a C# developer. We want a C# developer who knows ASP.NET, who knows Java, who knows this. Okay, they may not put Java on the list, but they'll put other languages around it which aren't your mainstream language. And if you've picked those up in your own spare time, it would really help with your next role. Depending on the company you join, you find that some companies are quite keen for developers to go on courses, and I've been on quite a lot of courses. But the warning with courses is if you go on a course that is not typically required in the role that you're currently in, chances are it will be a waste of time at the end of the day if you don't use it outside of work and you don't use it in the office. It'll just be a nice trip to London or wherever the course takes place. So if you're asked to go on, would you like to go on a course? Try to choose a course that you're interested in, but it's actually going to be relevant in the next 2 or 3 months. So you come back from the course and you're able to use it. So I've been on a course for security, for example, where I come back and it changes the way I write my code, because now I'm fully aware of what the dangers of writing bad code are, and those sorts of courses are really relevant because they make an immediate impact in what you're doing. But other than going on courses, there are many other resources online that you could use. YouTube is a wonderful place to go and learn new things and just practice on your own, really. Just make sure you have a good laptop, or you can even do programming sort of apps on the phone now, where you can actually write programs. You can learn Python on your phone. You don't really have to sit in front of a laptop. If you're on the train for 20 minutes, just pick up your phone, go to one of these app sites, and you can just learn from there, really. There's loads of apps that you can learn programming with. I mean, Pluralsight's another good place where you can learn programming on the fly as you're moving around, really. Interactions with people in my role, basically the business analysts, we discuss the user stories with them and get more details about what the requirements are. And other developers, obviously, because you have to share information with each other. For example, if you're going to check in a piece of code that you think is only half baked and therefore will affect someone else's code, you need to let them, make them aware of that. So you have to interact with the BAs, the other developers, and primarily QA as well, because obviously everything you do needs to be tested by someone else, because if you test your own code, chances are you'll say it's great, and there's no bugs in it, because you won't find them because you're not looking for them. You're only looking for what really works, which is what you have done, what you have written. So yeah, that's the main people I interact with, the business analysts and the developers and the QA team. Make sure you commit to spending some time on yourself, because things change when you change. So if you can change your own prospects by working on yourself, then things will change for you. So 2 hours a day, it's not that much. If you just steal those 2 hours away and just wake up, 2 hours earlier, perhaps, and just spend the first hour just working on yourself and the next hour on whatever goals you have, and make sure you have goals, because if you don't have goals, you don't know where you're heading. And if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. As I say, it's just a cliche thing, but it's true. Honestly, if you have no goals, you will just drift from one place to the other and you will have no idea where you're going. If I set myself a target back when I started my Java role saying, in 10 years time, I want to be a top C# developer doing X, I would be there by now. But if you don't have that target, you don't have that goal, then you tend to, find your way. You will get somewhere, but it might not necessarily be where you plan to be. So if you planned where you're going to go, somehow you would be tuned into whatever will take you there. And I think that's what I would tell myself if I can just go back in time. Just spend 2 hours a day planning and deciding where I want to go, and just spend those 2 hours a day working on getting there. And I would definitely have been there by now, or at least close to getting there. Yeah. One thing to note as a developer when you apply for a role is to remember that job is a two-way street. So it's not just about what you're going to gain from the job, but also what sort of the job's going to offer you. So what you're going to put in is what you're going to get out. But obviously, the role has to be such a way that you can gain something from it. So I applied for one role where I thought, oh, this company is great. I'm going to be benefiting from this knowledge. I'm going to do this. And they were using a big system, SAP system, and I thought, oh, SAP would be great to learn. And I went in there thinking, oh yeah, it took me on an ABAP course. ABAP programming is a very strange language, but I thought, yeah, I'm going to persist with this. And then at some point in the role, I realized this role isn't giving me anything. I'm coming here every day and I'm getting bored and getting distracted, and I'm not really progressing. And at that point, as a developer or in any career at all, basically, whatever you're doing, just make sure you're thinking for yourself. So when you think this role isn't giving me what I wanted, what I came in for, just quit. So I just thought to myself, well, I need to look for something else, and then just leave. There was nothing wrong with the company. I just left. And in the past, there is this thing that I don't know if other people do it, but when I join a company, depending on how the interview goes or what I know about the company, I make a decision in my head. I set a target saying, I'm going to be here for 2 years. I'm going to be here for 3 years. And I try to stick to it as much as I can. And if the role is great and obviously surprises you while you're there, then perhaps you stay longer. Or there's another incentive. At one company, they said, if you stay here for 5 years, we'll give you X amount for just being here for 5 years. So I thought, oh, why not? Stay here for 5 years. The role's good. I was still learning, so I was happy to stay. So while you're in the job, make sure you're thinking for yourself, where is this job taking me? So what am I getting out of this? And what am I becoming as part of my time here? Don't just go in every day and come home every day and get paid, because you will get paid in the other job as well. It's just that you might benefit more from the other job. So if it's time to leave, just leave. Don't feel bad, because if there's time for you to go, they won't mind telling you to go. So just be prepared to think in your role. Am I getting what I came in for? or is it getting better? Should I stay longer?